Hi everybody, today we're going to be taking a look at how to set up a 2-axis CNC file. Let's get started. Okay, the first thing we're going to be taking a look at is our stock. The stock is the material that you're going to be cutting all of these lines out of. So in the template, if you look over on the layers panel, we have a stock layer in orange. I've already drawn my rectangle, and it is very important to align your stock geometry to the bottom left corner to the world 0. All right. Once we have our stock aligned, we need to extrude it to the desired thickness or whatever thickness of material you're going to be using. In this case, my material is a little less than ½ inch, so I'm going to do the extrude curve command. I'm going to do a little less than ½ inch up, not down, up from the C-plane. So we'll take a look, make sure we're flat on the C-plane and extruding our geometry up. You can go ahead and delete the initial curve for your stock material. The next thing we need to do is to take all of our line work and move it to the topmost surface of our stock material. So we can go ahead and select all this line work, deselect our stock. There's two ways we can do this. We can use the gumball and move it up whatever the thickness of our material was, and now it's sitting on the top. Or we can select all of our line work and use the project command. It's asking us to select the surface, polysurface, or mesh we want to project our geometry onto. To do that, we'll go to this top surface and we'll hold down Shift and Control at the same time and click this top layer, hit right click or enter, and that will move it to the top of our stock. So now we are ready to start manipulating our layers and get them ready to submit. All right, now that our line work is on top of the stock, we can go ahead and move on to the next layer, and we can go ahead and hide our stock layer so it doesn't get in the way. The first layer we're going to be dealing with is the profile outside layer. So we can go into top view. The profile outside, similar to the laser, is going to cut around our shape. It's going to cut our shape out. So we want to turn these two outer semicircles into our profile outside cuts layer. So we'll go ahead and right click that, change object layer, and we're almost ready. One important thing to note with the CNC is that it cannot cut interior corners. It is limited to do that because the bit has a certain radius. So the smallest radius of interior corner we're able to do is 1/8 of an inch because that's the smallest bit that our CNC can handle. But I want these two pieces of geometry to notch together when it's done. A way to address this is to do what's called dog boning the corners. You'll see why it's called that in a second. So we're going to use the circle command and go to this corner and create a radius circle. Let's go with about a little bit over 1/4 of an inch. We'll zoom in and move it close to this corner. Then we'll use the mirror command and make a second one. We'll select both of these and then use the trim command. We'll select our exterior geometry and use the trim command again. And then we will join these. And now we have geometry that's ready to notch together. I'm going to really fast do it on the other side. Okay, now that I have those ready to go, they'll be able to cut out and notch together, and those corners will fit together. Another thing that it's important to note early on in the process of setting this up is that all curves have to be closed curves. Every single one. The only exception is our engraving curves or our etching curves. That would be here. Everything else has to be closed, not a group, not next to each other, closed curves. The next step is to set up all of our profile inside cuts. That's holes that are going to be cut out all the way through the material on the inside. For this, I want to use all of these rectangles and turn them into inside cuts. Again, I know that these are going to have rounded corners as it can't cut interior corners, but that's okay. I can chisel that out later or sand it out later. For this, that is all we need to do. Sometimes you may have more complicated inside cuts where you need to dog bone like this to fit joints in, but for the purposes of this, I just need these rectangles. All right, the next step is to set up all of our pocket layers. In the template, we've given you a handful of pocketing and hole layers. If you need to add more, I will show you how to do that in a moment. But for now, I've created all these different pocket layers because I want my pockets to be at varying depths. So I need to have that labeled and organized. So first I'm gonna go through and change all of my layers. And then I need to go in and give each one a depth. For this project, I've included a 3D model of what I want to cut out, so I can go in and quickly reference what the depths are. The depth of this first one is a 1/16 of an inch, so I can go in, and where I've given this space, I can go one. So I know that this pocket is a 1/16 of an inch deep. I can then go in to the layers and label this as 1/16 of an inch depth. You can use decimal or fraction. We generally prefer decimal fractions. I can do the same thing at my pocket layer. You can use the measure command, or I often just use the polyline command, and you can look down in the bottom left corner. It'll tell you the length of the line you're drawing. So this next one, it is an 1/8 of an inch depth. So again, I'll go in and change that to say 1/8 of an inch. I need to check this third layer. So I'll select this curve. Again, I often just measure with a polyline. This one is 3/8 of an inch. So we'll change that to 0.375 inches. And finally our yellow layer, measure that, and we'll call that 0.1875. 0.1875 inches. Now if you can see here, I have another little issue, is that I have a pocket within a pocket. So that would be 5 different pocketing layers. So I'm going to need to create a new pocket layer. So if we go to the layers panel, we can go up here and do new layer. And then if you do create a new layer, please name it in the same fashion that we have them and give it its own unique color. So we'll call this pocket 5. And if I remember correctly, I made the depth 0.4. 0.4. And then I need to give it a unique color, so I'll double click the color, bring it in where you can see it, and I'll just make this one some shade of green. We'll go dark green. And we'll change our line, so we'll select it, right click the layer we want, and do change object layer. And now all of our pocketing layers are ready to go. The next thing we're going to look at is creating holes in our geometry. So we'll go into top view and we'll look at all of our holes. So we've started out with 2 different hole layers. If you need to add more, you absolutely can. We just ask that you do it in the same way that you would have done with the pocket layers. So I'll go through and select the holes that I want on my first layer. And on my holes 1, I want them to go all the way through the material. If you would like your holes to go all the way through the material, instead of assigning the hole a depth in inches, please just type in through, so we know that you want this hole to go all the way through your material. For these next holes, I'm going to change them to holes 2, and I want these ones to go about halfway through the material. So let's make that 0.25 inch depth. And finally, I have this last one that I added that I need to create a new layer for. So again, we'll go to new layer and we'll name it in the same fashion, holes 3. And let's make this depth 0.375, 3/8 of an inch. We'll give it a unique color. Let's go with red orange. And then we do change object layer. And the only thing we have left is our etching. For etching or engraving, we have offered 3 different depths, as those are the general depths we go, from 1/16 of an inch, which would be deep, to 1/64 of an inch, which would be shallow. All you have to do for this is select which ones you want on any given layer. And your file's ready to go. Finally, before you submit your file, it's always good to go through a quick checklist and make sure everything is set up correctly, as CNCs are very finicky machines. First, double check that your stock is aligned to the world 0 point, bottom left corner at the 0 point. Second, make sure everything is on one of the CNC layers. If you need to add new layers, that is fine. Please do it in the same naming convention that we have given you, and do not have any extra layers in your file. Another thing to make sure is that you have all of your curves closed besides paths that an etch could follow. A quick way to do that is to use the cell open curve command. And right now we have only our etch curves selected. So we know we're good to go there. And the last thing to do is save this with the proper file naming convention. So if we go in, save as, I'll do full name, course number, assignment. And our file is ready to submit. Thanks for watching.
CNC Construction.